When I think about Tomb Raider 4 as a game, basically all the thoughts that we discussed about Tomb Raider 3, a la the same old mentality, basically is just really exemplified in Tomb Raider Chronicles, because there's just nothing to distinguish that from its predecessors. It was fine mechanically to a point, but you were kind of getting to the point where the mechanics weren't holding up anymore. The game just wasn't holding up anymore. They just weren't doing enough with it anymore. It was literally just the same game with new characters, with new locations, but not all that much changed. And that just doesn't work for any franchise.
When I last talked about Tomb Raider 3, I felt that the game didn't live up to the hype of Tomb Raider 2. Well, when Tomb Raider 4 came up, I actually had that hope that it would be better, like they would have a new direction for it. Instead, what we got was an unmemorable game where really the only thing that was memorable was Lara Croft in pigtails in the first ever mandatory tutorial stage. That would become common from every Tomb Raider game from here on out for the final 3 games. The concept of the story was, you know, was revolving around, you know, Lara Croft finding artifacts to I don't know, have something to do about freeing her master. But apparently he ends up getting possessed. But it really, there was nothing memorable about this game outside that tutorial stage. And honestly, the tutorial stage kind of, I think, annoyed me the most because it really made the game slow. It made the game repetitive, and it showed off so many flaws that it needed that I don't think the developers intended to show off. The graphics, again, I mean, they look great, but like it said in Tomb Raider 3, it was just like you had that feeling of been there, done that. The narrative of the game, I mean, it wasn't really there. I mean, sure, you had Lara Croft, you know, interacting with people, trying to, like, you know, solve mysteries and move forward in the plot. But it just wasn't memorable.
Tomb Raider 4, I remember the training stage with Lara Croft being a young woman, or young and like 16 or whatever, and you had to do the training stages. Alright, that was fine. But then afterwards, it was just, I just remember it being a bit confusing. The only memorable thing I remember from that game is, I guess, the tightrope walking. And that was a new feature. It's all I really remember doing, and I wanted to get back into it, but I just, not that I didn't have the time, I guess there were more interesting games at that moment.
When you look at modern franchises like a Call of Duty or an Assassin's Creed, those manage to do the kind of numbers that they do because they change locations, they change concepts. Even if they don't work, it's something different. So when you get an Assassin's Creed Revelation, you have a tower defense minigame, and it eats, but the point is they did something else. Then you go to the next game, and okay, now it's in colonial America, and it eats, but at least they did something else. With Call of Duty, you're in modern times, and you're in Vietnam, and you're in modern times, and you're in the future. It's different things. It's trying different things. It's doing different things. And Tomb Raider was not doing anything different. They had to come out with a different version of Street Fighter other than Street Fighter 2 because people stopped paying money for Street Fighter 2. And Core never got that. So, when you're on your 4th game, and they did this for another 2 games, keep in mind. When you're on your 4th game that's doing the same thing as the last 3, people are going to say, okay, I already paid money for this. Well, why do I want to do it again?
When I heard that they started looking into making a Tomb Raider movie, I actually was kind of interested at first, but because there has been so many really bad video game-based films leading up to this idea, I was not hopeful, mainly because, let's just say Super Mario Brothers left a really, really sour taste in my mouth. And it's one that probably won't go away for a while. The only good video game-based movie that came out at the time was Mortal Kombat. And because, well, let's put it this way. It's an American fighting game made for Americans. As opposed to, like, you know, Street Fighter being made by a Japanese company, so they don't really have much of a story integrated, whereas Mortal Kombat did have a great story, and it was easily adaptable into a film, and then you get some people who actually, you know, have been taught and choreographed very well into fighting, and you just had a success for a great movie right there. But then you had like other movies like, you know, Wing Commander that, you know, tried to be faithful to the movies and they just weren't. So the idea of Tomb Raider, I was not very hopeful for, I guess. It wasn't until like I saw how the film was coming together then that I got excited. And the fact that they announced Angelina Jolie. And to be honest, I never heard of her up until now. And then when I tried to find out who she was, the only thing I learned about her was the fact that she was topless and made out with a girl in the movie Gaia.
I really wasn't tuned into the Tomb Raider movie when it was first announced, mostly because I wasn't tuned into video game movies in general when they were first announced. I mean, come on, Super Mario Brothers, really? So, Tomb Raider was not high on my list of things that I gave a damn about. When they announced Angelina Jolie as the lead, I think I was vaguely aware of Angelina Jolie as an actress, in the sense that I was like, oh, it's that chick from Hackers. Okay, whatever. At least she can do a British accent. And then they started doing the promotional materials, and I'm like, somebody got a boob job. But I mean, aside from that, like, I just figured that it wasn't going to be anything particularly exciting. I was like, you know, maybe it'll be a good movie, fine, great, whatever. But at that point in time, most of your video game movies were absolutely abysmal. Mortal Kombat was the only video game movie I'd seen at that point where I didn't feel like I had lost brain cells and time out of my life that I could never get back from having watched it. So my expectations were not very high going into that.
Tomb Raider movie was probably one of my favorite parts of my Tomb Raider fandom, or just my Tomb Raider experience. I remember reading in an Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine that it was going to be either Sandra Bullock or Posh Spice, was it? Or who's now Victoria Beckham. Or it was going to be some other people. And when Angelina Jolie came out, I did not know who she was. But when the movie came out, I just remember the beginning of the movie, just her fighting a big robot. It felt like the game. It felt like Tomb Raider. So I really liked the first movie, and then even when like the whole shower scene, like there was just all these things brought together, actually made it feel like a real Tomb Raider movie. Like, I think the first movie was a good adaptation to the game.
Best video game movie ever created in general is probably still and probably will always forever be Mortal Kombat, because it's a legitimately good movie, and if you don't agree, I don't really care. But Tomb Raider is a good movie within the confines of its subject matter, and actually almost manages to be a solid action movie in its own right, because they acknowledge the continuity of the franchise and actually work with it for the most part. Giving Lara a romantic interest was kind of a little counter to how the character has always worked otherwise, but everything else about it was just straight, here is Lara Croft, and she is raiding tombs, and she is kicking the shit out of everything that she sees. And Angelina Jolie pulled it off. She did a really good job of portraying the character in a way that was effective, in a way that worked for the character that she was.
When I did finally see Tomb Raider, I was actually ecstatic. It was a great film. I thought that they did a great job of, like, you know, adapting the qualities of Tomb Raider, practically making it a female Indiana Jones. Granted, they, you know, didn't completely, like, you know, stay respectful to the Tomb Raider, like, you know, mythos of, like, you know, Lara Croft being a strong, independent woman. Instead, you know, they made her a woman that actually had vulnerabilities, which I'm actually fine with, but when they, you know, try to wedge in a love interest at the, like, towards the middle to the end of the movie, it kind of, like, almost, like, you know, felt weird to me, but overall, I really enjoyed the film, and I'd say that and Mortal Kombat are probably two of the best video game-based adaptations I've ever seen.
Angelina Jolie was pretty fantastic in the role, actually. I really have nothing bad to say about her in that position. She did really good as Lara Croft within the confines of, you know, what the movie did. Like, the movie was not Shakespeare. It was not an Academy Award-winning film. But Angelina Jolie is generally a good actress. She generally can make just about anything work. Mr. and Mrs. Smith notwithstanding. So when she went out there and I'm Lara Croft, okay, I buy that. I can believe this thing. And she just went out there and did the role justice. She did what needed to be done to get the movie over.
Okay, I lied when I said there wasn't any other memorable moments about Tomb Raider 4. Actually, at the end of Tomb Raider 4, supposedly Lara Croft dies. Spoilers. And, you know, you thought that there might now be, like, coming up with Eidos and Core Designs would probably come up with a new way, a new direction to, like, try and bring back the Tomb Raider franchise. No, instead what they do is they try to cash cow the franchise by releasing this title that, in terms of his storyline, is three old farts gathering around talking about Lara Croft's adventures as if they were there, which is mind-boggling in and of itself.
Okay, so Tomb Raider Chronicles. Alright, so where to begin with this thing? I'm not really sure what the benefit is of playing a bunch of disconnected stories that are in no way associated to one another except as cash cow. But beyond that, the plain and simple fact of the matter is the same old shit. Now, I understand why they did it. They needed to keep the Tomb Raider name out there while they actually tried to redesign the engine for what eventually became Angel of Darkness. And they were just like, whatever, we've still got a functional engine, we've still got a character we have to promote, just something out the door. So they took a bunch of ideas for concepts that didn't fit anywhere else within the confines of the game, put it on a disc, and sent it out into the world to make money. And it's no surprise that it's the second lowest selling game in the franchise history because it was boring, also ran generally not very good, obviously a cash cow, had nothing to do with anything, and offered no compelling reasons to play or own it.
Just repetitive, and that's all Tomb Raider Chronicles was. It was just repetitive. It was nothing new, nothing genuine, nothing interesting. It was boring, it was BS, and I did not play that much of the game, and I was just like, you know, I was starting to, like, you know, phase out of being a Tomb Raider fan at this point, and unfortunately, it wasn't this game, but it might as well have been this game to have phased me off of the Tomb Raider franchise.
The entirety of my thought process on the idea of there being a second Tomb Raider movie at the time when it was announced was basically, meh. Tomb Raider was kind of on its way out for me as a person. I was kind of less and less interested in the franchise. And I figured that the film, honestly, even if it was as good as the first movie, you know, that was the best that it could hope to aspire to. And I just didn't even know if they'd be able to pull that off.
Okay, right after Tomb Raider Chronicles, the idea of a sequel for the first Tomb Raider movie was being thrown around, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? The first movie was actually good, and it made a lot of money. And apparently what Paramount Studios was trying to do is apparently tie the movie in somewhat with a new Tomb Raider game that was coming out for the PS2, Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness. And you can tell that they were both, you know, working with each other in a way, because you could see that when Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness was being worked on, they showed off the new Lara Croft model, and it looked similar to Angelina Jolie. I mean, like, with more curves, you know, darker features, you know, giant pouty lips. And the movie itself was trying to, like, you know, be on a more huge level like it was in the previous games, where you would, like, go to all these, like, you know, different locations in search of ancient artifacts that does who knows what. So I was interested in this movie, and I had some decent expectations for it. But then again, you know how some sequels come, like in the 90s, unless it was Terminator 2, sequels sucked.
Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness sucks like it means it. The concept of the game never even particularly impressed me to begin with. I didn't really know where they were going to go from Laura's dead, oh wait, we found her, at the end of Chronicles. So the idea of what they were doing with it in general, with the redesign of the character, well, the redesign of the character didn't really matter all that much. It was basically still Lara Croft. The dark outfit was kind of whatever. It just seemed like they were trying to mature the game in general, and it was like, okay, I don't really know what you're going to do to make a game about a character who digs around the ground looking for artifacts mature, but fine. The redesign of the character didn't matter to me. The idea of there being another character in the game to play as seemed really stupid at the time, and the game in no way paid off anything worthwhile.
When I finally got to play Angel of Darkness, I was crushed. I actually was extremely disappointed at this point. This was the game that literally made me not want to play another Tomb Raider game for a long period of time. Granted, there was a good space of time where there was no Tomb Raider games. The redesigned Lara Croft model, you know, I was fine with. I couldn't give a crap if, you know, they redesigned her to look more like Angelina Jolie. But when you try to make the game darker toned, make it the storyline is Lara Croft is on the run for the suspicion of murdering her mentor, trying to show off a new game engine that worked well for the PS2 era, just to show off what it's capable of. And then on top of that, you had a horrendous... I mean, when I complained of... I mean, I was not a fan of tank controls, and to be truthfully honest, I didn't think there was a way to make tank controls even less enjoyable. Well, Angel of Darkness kind of proved that you can make it worse, somehow. They were very unresponsive. They were clunky. It was impossible to try and go upstairs, to turn at the right point, to climb ladders. You had to be at the perfect point, which made absolutely no sense. One of the biggest things I had was this RPG-esque type system growth feature where, like, Lara Croft's abilities increase when you start to hit certain key points in the game. I remember this one area, I was like, it was early in the game, and I found some kind of, like, different way of getting inside a building, and there was this giant chasm I had to jump, and no matter what, I couldn't jump across it. Well, I got out of the building, I walked around, I found another way in, and when I pushed a crate, it suddenly said, Lara Croft just was standing there stating, "Oh, my legs feel stronger." What? I was like, okay, so I climbed back up. I was like, oh, I'm back in the same room with the giant chasm. So I jump it, and lo and behold, I jump across it cleanly. I don't hang on the ledge or anything. I jump across the whole thing. And that system, I honestly thought, was the most stupid addition to the franchise. And it doesn't even stop there. I mean, then they include a second playable character with some kind of ex-convict or convict on the run who uses some kind of, like, hand blades that he fights with, and it just didn't work, and the game didn't work. It was a pile of crap, and I was just... it made me angry. I wanted to break the game discs.
Insofar as the actual game itself goes, the visual engine was pretty, I guess, at the time that it came out. The game itself was a boring, clunky, unimaginative, uninspired, messy, derivative piece of aside from the fact that the visual engine at the time was kind of interesting and the audio was kind of interesting, nothing about the game worked. Not even the plot worked, because you start off with, oh, well, Laura's going to go meet up with her mentor and discuss whatever, and it's like, wait, didn't you hate each other 2 games ago? Weren't you afraid that he was possessed by some kind of demon dog or something? And didn't he just, like, find your dead ass in this catacombs, like, the end of the last game? Are you going to explain anything that's going on here? No? Okay, thanks. Awesome. It's just, they just skipped a lot of the game's plot didn't make any sense. The mechanics were not, well, it was just not a good game. It was just not a good game.
When I saw the second Tomb Raider movie, I kind of wasn't happy with it. It was okay, but it definitely was, like, below par where I expected, you know, like a sequel movie to be, because, you know, like I said earlier, sequel movies usually aren't as good as the first unless you're Terminator 2, and it wasn't that great. And on top of that, because of how bad Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness was, Paramount Studios decided, for some whatever reason, to blame the game on affecting their movie sales. Forget the fact that the movie was being critically panned left and right, and it was doing horribly at the box office. No, it's the game's fault. It's IDOS and Core's fault. No, I don't buy that for a second. I think that if you have a movie that you don't think did well, you should stand by your work and be like, oh, we screwed up. But they didn't. They wanted to place the blame on somebody else, and I thought that was bull.
Insofar as Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness being the last game that Core had anything to do with in the Tomb Raider franchise, not surprised. Because, well, Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness actually did okay financially, but that was largely because of an insanely aggressive marketing campaign. Oh, it's the new redesigned Lara. Well, let's give it another chance, and people go out and they buy it, and it sucks. But Core had brought Eidos as a company to amazing heights financially because of how well the games did. Because outside of Hitman, all Eidos had was a bunch of PC games that did really well on the PC and not really well anywhere else. Like Thief did fine. All of the games that Warren Spector headed up, like Deus Ex 2, etc., did fine. There was Daikatana, but we don't talk about that. Eidos had a lot of successful PC games that were really good. On the console, what did they have? Fighting Force. Does anybody remember Fighting Force? No. Why? Because it sucked. Ninja. Anybody remember Ninja? God, I hope not. Why? Because it sucked. Most of their console games were the drizzling shits. So you had Tomb Raider, that was not only basically Eidos' most successful franchise, but also the one that was really doing big numbers on the console, and Core was just driving that into the ground. I would have taken it away from them too. They probably should have taken it away from them after Chronicles. But live and learn. They gave them Angel of Darkness. Angel of Darkness sucked. So it was really the smartest thing for them to do to hand it to anybody else, and Crystal Dynamics had a proven track record of at least making some decent games at that point, so they were as good a developer to hand it to as anyone, I suppose.
So, I pretty much thought that the Tomb Raider franchise was dead at this point, but apparently Eidos had different plans, and they took the franchise away from Core Designs, you know. And this is a franchise that started in '95 when the development of the game began for the 32-bit systems, and now it's being taken away from them and being given to a different developer. And that developer was Crystal Dynamics, and these are people who have, for many years, been mostly exclusive to PC games, and very rarely made games for the consoles outside of the Legacy of Kain franchise. So, any idea of them making this game and Core not having anything anymore pretty much signified the end of, I think, Core Designs as well. In fact, I don't think they exist anymore, and that's a damn shame, to be truthfully honest. It's a shame to see people lose their jobs, even when the franchise was going downhill. You just don't want to see people lose jobs over something as bad as, you know, the quality of games.
So, the change from Eidos and Core, Tomb Raider going from Eidos and Core to a different owner, just felt like it was going to just change drastically. It's just the game won't be the same. I don't think they'll focus on much of the. I don't think they were going to focus on much of the same control schemes, and lo and behold, that's what happened basically.
To be truthfully honest, I believe at this point Lara Croft hit rock bottom with Angel of Darkness, and I didn't think there was any chance for her to recover. Lo and behold, though, Crystal Dynamics actually stepped up to the plate and surprised us.